I mean, obviously Spain are World Cup winners and European champions, but France have been in the top three or top four of the last three World Cups. I covered the tournament in 2018 when a young Kylian Mbappé led France to the World Cup title. They narrowly lose out in 2022 in that final, that chaotic final to Argentina. And then, of course, they lose to Spain in the semifinals and then lose the third place match to England. Although I don't put much weight into that third place final, Ronan. I'm pretty sure that's pretty much usual. Yeah, no one should. And it was a fantastic game to watch for the neutral. But, by far and large, Didi Deschamps had his critics, but it was a pretty successful era, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's been going for, I think, 14 years. Deschamps in the French team, and it was coming after really tough years because we have the catastrophe in 2010, not going out of the World Cup group stage and the strike of the players in the bus. Then we got 4 years of a few years of Laurent Blanc, who was one of the old 1988 champions as a player and a successful coach with Bordeaux, but he didn't fully click. So it wasn't sure that we would climb that much under Deschamps' leadership, but he really managed to build something really impressive in this length as a national team coach, especially over a few generations, a few different cycles of World Cup and Euros. So yeah, near the end, there's been a few, critics, and it was known for some time that it will be his last major competition. So I think French football as a whole had time to prepare to find the best way to work on the next stage, the next step, and find the best candidate.
I mean, I remember in 2014 when France went out in the quarterfinals to Germany in a very, tightly contested match. And I remember France going out and thinking this is going to be an amazing team over the next 12 years.
It was quite promising at the time. It was great mix of quite a few of the old guys of 2010, 2012, a few of them, but we had the younger Pogba, younger Griezmann, this type of players who have been really pivotal to the success 4 years later in Russia and to some other great moments of the team. So it was only the beginning at the time, and really he laid the groundwork for years of great performances.
Yeah, absolutely did. Focusing now on Zidane. He had this really great success with Real Madrid, right? Looking at his profile now on Transfermarkt, the 3 Champions League titles stand out. I always joke that coaching Real Madrid is kind of like coaching a national team because you get all the best players in the world, you assemble them, and then, the coaches that are usually the most successful with Real Madrid are the ones that actually don't do that much coaching. They're the ones that sort of, the Carlo Ancelotti's, the Zinedine Zidane's, they walk in and their aura is so significant. Like, who am I to argue with who I think is one of the greatest football players I've ever seen play live in Zinedine Zidane? Who am I to argue with him? Even if you're like a Kylian Mbappé, right? Or Vinny Jr., you're not going to argue with Zinedine Zidane because what you have done with your career, he has done many times over. And so doing that at Real Madrid, I think in some really weird ways almost perfectly set him up for this France job now, because it's a very similar situation. This is one of the most talented teams in the world. I think ultimately the only reason they didn't win a World Cup is because maybe the midfield isn't as strong as Spain's. And games are usually right now in the game, the way it works right now is one in midfield. But this is still a team that if I would tip who's going to win the Euros, I would say France, Spain. Those are the 2 teams I would put my money on. And he now walks into this role with this massive aura. What do you think he's going to change?
Yeah, I was about to mention the term aura because I think he's really coming at the top of, like, he has proven himself time and time over, both as a player and a coach, and he's not even taking any risk. Like, I don't think he will destroy his reputation if France doesn't really click under him, but I think he might not change too much things at the start. Like, like the French team is a bit between generations. Like I don't think there's so many players from the World Cup group that will exit the team at the nearest opportunity. Maybe a guy like N'Golo Kanté, or if they want to refresh a goalkeeper pool, maybe they get rid of Brice Samba with 33 or 34, I'm not sure, and bring out a guy like Robin Risser who joined Newcastle, for example. Or at least he was still in the group as third goalkeeper at the World Cup, give him more opportunities. So yeah, I think we probably won't see too much new players called in the first months. Like we have the Nations League kicking back up in September and October. And I think it will probably be a rather stable group. Maybe a few younger players could be called for first time. I think about names like maybe Eli Kroupi, who had a first great season in Premier League, or maybe a guy like Adrien Truffert. It's actually two players from Bournemouth, but I think it's two players who showed great potential, have been going out through various of the French youth national teams, and have proven themselves at a high level like the Premier League in not one of the biggest teams. So I think it shows the great prospect they can be for the French national team. And especially for a guy like Truffert, I think it's the type of players like fullbacks in France has always been an ongoing topic. Like we have really been struggling to find the best options there. We have fine players like Malo Gusto, Luca Dean, the Hernandez brothers, but it's not like they've been default choices, but they've never been like the biggest satisfactions of the roster. So I think that might be one of the main areas that he will try to focus to bring some new spirit, new strengths in that area of the French national team. But I think in terms of French depth, there's nothing to be scared of, but it's making the right choices or promoting the right newcomer at the right time. But it's he will have his options.
What do you think is going to change in terms of the style of play? Because I think what was really fascinating about this World Cup is that the attacking players were given much more freedom than it was maybe the case in the past.
Yeah.
And except for that game in Spain where, the Spanish are the Spanish, they're so ultimately in control. I was at the final against Argentina, and I thought it was really kind of scary how they dominated Argentina, and it was the same against France, right? So I guess my question is, what do you think Zidane is going to do when he's looking at this France squad and saying, well, we have this juggernaut in Spain who don't really care much about attacking football, they just dominate you. How do you think he's going to approach and break the Spanish cycle?
Yeah, so that was one of my main interrogations too, because I was checking against the previous rosters of Zidane. Like he used to play mainly in 4-3-3 with Real Madrid, compared to the last few games of the French national team with Deschamps, who got really used to 4-2-3-1. So, for example, if he has to play with a different number of midfielders that he was used to at Real Madrid, at least it keeps the fact of like only one striker and two wingers. So I think this type of things he can quickly adapt on. But I think mainly the midfielder topic will be a huge one for him, because it's one of the most crowded areas in terms of talent in French football, and it's one when he might have less options that he would usually have in the type of playing style he used at Real Madrid. So I think most of the typical roster of France might not move, especially in the attack with Dembélé, Mbappé. Maybe guy like Cherki could play a bit more than he did under Deschamps. But like for midfield, with at least for French observers, we were rather pleased with Tchouaméni and quite a revelation of Manu Koné, who had a great couple of games while Tchouaméni was injured. And guys like Rabiot have still been really reliable. So it's quite unsure yet of which type of players he will prefer to use, because for now we haven't really heard him of which are his preferred players. Like I think now from the time he had at Real Madrid, there's not much players that have been under his rule at Real Madrid that is still eligible for the French team. So I don't think he has any major preferences. Like he hasn't made any. We don't really know like his favorite players or anything. Like he hasn't made it sort of that known in media or anything. So
Yeah.
a bit of doubt around that.
I guess like my final question really to you is then, before we let you go into your much deserved end of the day, Ronan, is N'Golo Kanté. He seemed to be the one that France has not been able to replace.
Mm.
You know, he was still in the squad, right? Even though he plays in Saudi. And when I look the way where he played when he was at his most dominant, controlling midfield and controlling play, and they had, I can't really see anyone like that for France at the moment. Is that maybe the biggest weakness? You mentioned the fullbacks as well, but is that the biggest weakness at the moment, that they just don't have an N'Golo Kanté?
That's a great point actually, because in some way we could point to the quality of the French midfield, but it's kind of lacking like a clear leader, like Conte was or Pogba could be at times. Like we don't have this type of players. Like Tchouaméni hasn't really risen to this occasion to be really the top midfielder of the team, or a guy like Camavinga has even been left out of the World Cup roster.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a gap to find a clear leader. While we have a lot of players in this type of clear best years, typically of their career around 25, 26 years old, like Manu, Koné, Tchouaméni, Boubacar Kamara from Aston Villa, Matteo Guendouzi wasn't at the World Cup either, but could maybe make a comeback, or this type of players who hasn't really proven themselves to be this type of leader yet. So either Zinedine Zidane puts trust into them and kind of transforms the impact they could have on the pitch, or either we wait on the rise of young talent that hasn't really shown himself yet in the national team. Maybe a guy like Zaire Emery, he's been here for years, but he's only 20 years old, so there's still a lot of potential to dig in. Or guys like Mayulu from PSG, also, or a few other youngsters that haven't got a senior call with the national team, but could be probably interesting in a couple years. I think we need this type of really leader of the midfield who could really dictate the pace of a game, like we've seen in games of France during this World Cup. That the game sometimes took really not a lot of time to go forward, like only on the wings, a lot of direct movement. The game didn't really wait on Rabiot, Tchouaméni, Koné to really build the game pass by pass. So I think in a way that could expose, depending on the type of playing style that Zidane will go for the team, it's also depends on the type of midfield he will need, or the type of attitude he will need for that lead midfielder. So I think there's a few options that could get an opportunity to prove that it could be the new Conte in a way, but there's not like a clear favorite that seems like it's clear that this guy is the new Conte. Like there's not this type of label yet. So I hope we get this maybe. I would personally hope a guy like Zaire Emery could be this type of player. Like he's been quite promising on a few positions, at least like for PSG during the past season. He's been even a substitute to Achraf Hakimi on the wing when he was away. So, and like he's had a full season. He's a back-to-back Champions League winner. So I think this type of players that could take the next step of his career, especially in the national team, to get this type of opportunity under a new coach.
You know, if anyone can find the next N'Golo Kanté or Zinedine Zidane, it will be Zinedine Zidane. So I think France is just going to be in very good hands. Ronan, thank you so much for joining today. Enjoy the rest of your day. And guys, we're going to move back now to the main show.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thank you, Manu.
Bye-bye.